Hey, welcome everybody to the third episode of What the Hell Vetica. Today we have Veronique Zayas on with us, and we're going to talk about building the dream studio.
Join Mikel Janda and guests to discuss the things that make creative people say, "What the hell, Vetica?"
And probably get into agency scaling and kind of the trauma that goes on behind the scenes of all of that kind of stuff. Okay, everybody who knows Veronique calls her V, and so I'll be calling her V on this call. Welcome to the podcast, V.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. As you know, I've been a fan and definitely look up to you. You've been quite a bit of a mentor to me. So yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It is going to be fun because I've been watching since we met like 4 years ago, and I've been watching your agency the whole run and all of the exciting changes and the new dream studio and hiring people, and I've gotten to see some of the behind the scenes on all of that, and it's been so fun. I get all your posts and I'm like, this looks amazing. I'm like your biggest fan over seeing you go through it, because what you've gone through in the last little few years is what I had, that exact same experience, that kind of unmanageable growth, the risk taking of buying the studio space and the build out and making the dream and all of that. It's been so fun to watch you do it because I got to kind of relive my own experience a little bit.
Thanks. I love hearing that because it makes me feel I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right? Because I think that's something that everybody experiences. Even you can be as successful as you are and you're always like, but I feel like I don't know what I'm doing here. So I definitely see there's a lot of correlation between what you've gone through and what I'm now kind of in the midst of. So that's why I'm always like, Mike, help.
I know. It's been so good. It's been so fun. Okay, let me talk you up a little bit. So V and I met in Pensacola. It was like 4 years ago, maybe almost 5, right?
2019 or 2018 when I went to Design XL. Yeah.
Crazy. So Design XL conference, she and there were 2 other people, Bree and Rachel, who were kind of the people figuring it all out, all the dynamics. And it was such a good show. And then they were going to do the next one, and then freaking COVID hit. And then they were going to do the next one, and then Rachel moved, and COVID was still lingering, and it all just got kiboshed, and it was super disappointing because I was going to go to both of those other ones.
Yeah. We'll make it happen again one year. I feel like it's like it has to come back at some point. But yeah, it was a good time.
I will be. Well, Bree's moved on too, so she's doing other things now too.
Yeah, she's still in the agency world. Yeah.
But I keep in touch with her too. Anyway, so we met then and hit it off then, and V was going through the kind of this initial scaling part. You had you and a couple sidekicks that were
So that was
team.
The phase. Yeah, it was small. It was I started Hatch Market, and I say started Hatch Markets basically like you move that situation that everybody that starts a business goes from, where you're freelancing and you're like, okay, I either hire somebody or I scale back. I really don't want to say no to these projects. I kind of have that entrepreneurial bug. So I did that in 2015, but it really was me and 1 or 2 people until that 2018, 2019 point when we met. So when we met, I was working out of a co-workspace in like maybe 100 square foot office with 3 of us crammed into it. So tight quarters. Which was probably one of the catalysts what we're going to be talking about today. Like, oh, this isn't okay. This isn't going to work ongoing. And I feel like I'm living in a box.
Yeah. I never did the co-working space. Me and 2 people were in my basement. And my second person, the first person I hired he came over after high school, and he would like edit stuff and build out websites and things for me. Then I hired my first full-time graduate of graphic design person. So I had my 3 people, me and 2 others, in my home basement, and that wasn't going to work. The first day that my full-time guy, he brought his lunch, he put it in the fridge upstairs, and then he came up the stairs at lunchtime. My wife and I were sitting at the kitchen table, and he was like, hey, can I use the microwave to heat up my lunch? And I was like, oh boy, we're getting office space now. Again, this is not going to work. So I never did the co-working space. It wasn't as big back then as it is now, where you can find those things. But at least the space that you had there was cool. It just wasn't scalable.
It wasn't scalable, and it was one of those,
and
it was really good for several. It's like a baby step, and that was the second co-working space that I actually worked out of. The first one was more of like a business incubator, and then the second one that you saw was a true kind of co-working space, and it was good for like that community feel, because like I'm a pretty social person by nature, and just having other business owners around you and learning from them and being part of that community. So I think it definitely offered that for sure. Yeah. And then from there, we were like, all right, let's build our own little community. And here we are. So,
Okay, so let's talk about that process. And let me just shout out a few things that I love about what's happened to you in the last few years. The scaling piece, going from you were a freelancer. I call it the overgrown freelancer phase, where you're a freelancer and you're the face of this business and it's really you. And then you have people who are just supporting behind the scenes kind of thing. That's the overgrown freelancer phase. Since then, you have blossomed into this full agency. You have 8 people on your team, right? Is it 8? I saw on your website.
8 full time now, and a handful of probably 4 other people that we use regularly for creative overflow or development and things like that. So probably kind of, a little bit beyond that as far as the people that are constantly in the works with projects. So
good.
It's exciting.
You have your dream studio, which we're going to talk about. Your new agency brand video is like as sick as it can be. And I told you this when I never had one that sick. It's so sick. So if you're listening to this, go to hatchmarkstudio.com and to her about page, the About Us page.
What if we can change the expectation of how we do this thing? Together we can go so much further than going alone. Building each other up and nurturing a space within and outside of 4 walls for ideas and plans to intertwine. To embrace collaboration, to sharpen a thought, to move towards clarity. What if in dreaming and creating together, we take root? What if we walk together side by side? In the beginning, client and agency heading down the same path, sometimes a straight shot, other times tangled and winding, but always tracking towards a shared goal. Organically becoming one team to build something that's never easy, but more than we could have imagined. What if in partnership, we both grow? What if we fiercely protect and hold ourselves to our own standards, turning away the nagging ease of conformity to boldly reject the expected, to radiate an energy that's contagious? What if we invite others to do the same, crafting a community like a slow build that envelops all it reaches in a warm glow? What if in that light that builds with each new spark, we all flourish?
On there, it's so good.
It's our video partner. Like, shout out Lindsay Film. We've worked with them for years. They're basically our go-to for everything, and they're top notch, the best out there. And we have such a great relationship with their team. They're basically like kind of an extension of our team when it comes to video support. So
you're lucky to have that.
I'm very lucky to have that. We wanted to do a brand video forever, but and we can talk about this a little bit more, but I didn't want to have the talking head thing. I was like, what's the brand? What's the feel? What's the vibe? And wanting to capture that, and really moving to the space allowed us to kind of dream a little bit and play and break things and tear things up and build a set. So it was really cool.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm jealous of it now. I watched it this morning before I got on with you, and I'm still jealous of it. Actually, it's playing on my screen right now. The background video on your homepage is just kind of sequencing through. What I like about what you did there is that so oftentimes that kind of approach, when an agency does it, it comes across cheesy. It comes across like you're embarrassed by it 10 years down the road, where you're like, oh, I thought that was cool. What was I thinking? And you can see that sometimes with the photos and stuff too, of your old agency photos. I always look at the ones when we went out and just shot in this field with snowballs and stuff, and we're just goofing around, and it was just the intention to kind of show that we're fun and creative, and and then you look back on it and it's like, that was so cheeseball. What was I thinking? And I think yours is gonna age nicely.
I hope
your brand
so.
reel.
That's the intention. We put a lot of love and a lot of work into that. So I definitely wanted this to be something that would kind of last for years, you know, and be true to who we are, not trying to be something that we're not, and kind of give a peek at how we do things. I think also brand videos can be a great example of like, what kind of work can we expect out of you? Like, we really want clients to work with us that want to kind of push the envelope a little bit and try something a little bit different from the norm. So I think that's a great almost case study on that. Yeah,
it's really good. Okay, so you've done a ton of work. You're a full service agency. You've got a great portfolio. You have a reputation in the Pensacola market. You're a player in that world that you are in. Let's talk about the agency studio dream. And one of the things that I want to talk about first is, why did you choose that route? Because very few people are dreaming that way anymore. When I was building my agency, it was like, okay, I got to have the 6 space. I got to have the glass walls and the wood floors and all the stuff. Yeah. That was the dream for me, but it made sense back then. But post-COVID, so many people are choosing to do the remote workforce thing and not carry the overhead of a studio space. What made you do what you're doing instead of the simpler route?
The simpler route.
And sometimes the better route. Like, sometimes you can source people anywhere in the world to be on your team rather than devoted to this market that you're in.
Yeah, I think that very much ties back, and I probably have somewhat controversial thoughts on the remote thing. My whole intention when I first started kind of working for myself, it was because I didn't want a 9-to-5 job, and I have found myself back in a 9-to-5 job, basically, right? But I think I've wanted, as I started thinking about scaling, it's like, how can we build something that's like a true creative community within our walls, bring in the right people that want to spend time together. Like, I want people to want to come to work and be part of the team. And I feel so freaking lucky that that is what we've kind of cultivated. Like, the only reason we've been able to scale the way that we have is because I do believe that we have the best people, you know, at least in this market, and very much like in some situations beyond, in many situations beyond. The team that we've built is unlike anything I've ever worked with before. I've had the privilege of working with some incredible agencies, had some great agency owners that I've learned a lot from, and there have been, like, every now and then you're with that group and you're like, okay, this really feels good, but it inevitably somebody leaves and something changes, and it changes. Like, change is inevitable, right? Yeah. But one of the things that we have really honed in on specifically in the past, like, 2-3 years is, like, the team is so good and they like each other. And being around each other, everybody really feeds off of each other's creativity. I mean, we live in a very high stress, like, business in general. Like, agency life is not easy. Like, it's not for everybody, and it inevitably, no matter all the variables that you can control, you can't control when something blows up with a project or something's off the rails, and, like, you know, it's not predictable. And being able to have a group of people together in one space that support each other and that like being around each other, like, you spend more time with your coworkers than you do with your family, unfortunately, in today's world. Oh, sorry, we have motion lights. So how can you build a space where people want to come together and spend their days together? And it's almost like, it sounds gross, but it really is kind of like a work family that we have here. And I think one of the most important things is the place that we had before this. I know we were in the co-working space, and that was with Liz Darwin, who's moved on to an agency in Orlando when he moved, and myself. And then we kind of started to grow out of that and moved into a space that was 700 square feet. And then in that space grew to 6 people. And it was like, we kind of hit that tipping point, and it was cool, and it was an open concept, but it was still small. But I had always had, like, in the back of my head, like, I want to build something. Yeah. And not only build something for like my team, and to have a place that everybody enjoyed coming in the morning and like hang out, and it was a creative and inspiring space and something people can feel comfortable and like be excited about going in to the office and hanging out with their coworkers / friends / and, you know, have a place for clients to come and everything. But also really have a place that can be a point for community, right? So for the greater Pensacola creative community, we've had like AAF meetings here. We had an incredible open house in January or February, I think, when we really opened the space up. So having something that could be more than just for us, and that's kind of started, like there was Mural Fest that's going on in town, and they've had events here. AAF, like we're going to be hosting a college night that I've already started to poke some of the agencies in town for their participation, to bring students out and connect them with us, with other agencies, with other businesses that need design or marketing or social media interns and things like that, to really start like making those connections. I want a space that's like a hub beyond just a place to work. Like I want it to be like this living organic thing that can be used for multiple things.
Yeah.
So that's, and I selfishly like building things. It was a really, really fun process. It was a super stressful process. But it had been something in the back of my mind for 3 years, probably, finding the right space. And when the opportunity came along, like it was the perfect building. Did I ever tell you the story of this building?
No, I was just going to ask you. Well, I know some of the history of it just from seeing your post, but what's your story of finding it and choosing it, and give us that. Like, when was that epiphany moment when you were like, oh my gosh, that's it? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I had my eyes on this space for quite a while. So it's a print shop. This place has been a print shop for like 40 years or something like that. And everybody, like, I've used the architect that we use this for a couple of their projects, and they always know when I walk in and be like, I want the most like exposed everything, open space, most like the walls behind us are the plaster or whatever, that was like our floors are still the concrete cement and they have ink stains on them. Awesome. So this was a building that I had my eye on, and it's kind of like a funky shape, like the corner, like it's a long rectangle and the door is kind of on the corner. So like when you look at it, it visually looks like it's kind of a triangle. It's like, it's got these weird quirky things about it. Yeah. There's still some cracks in the wall that need to be filled. Like this building is far from perfect, but it is absolutely perfect for us. Yeah. But it was this old print shop that I had kind of my eye on, and I was like, one of these days that's gonna come up for sale and it's going to be ours. Yeah. We had looked at a couple other spaces. They just weren't right. It was like, it just wasn't the right fit. So anyway, I was driving by one day and I saw a for sale sign up, and I was like, basically pulled over and called my realtor immediately and was like, hey, this is on the market. I don't care what it takes. We're getting this building. Yeah. So went and saw it the next day. We had a lot of drama with like getting through the process, because there was some weirdness with the sellers, and not the sellers, real estate agent was a little bit challenging. Somebody else came in. It was under contract with somebody else that was actually trying to turn into a house, which would have been really weird because it's on a very busy road. Yeah. But anyway, we ended up getting it. And once we were in here, realized, we had an idea of what it would have taken. We had contractors scope out the project and everything, but it was definitely more than expected, but beyond worth it. We put more into the renovation than we did at the cost of the building, because it was basically a full gut, plumbing, electrical, new roof. Roofs are expensive. Yeah. And pretty much starting from scratch, but it really allowed us to kind of tear things down and blank slate it and build what we wanted. But we kept a lot of the bones of the space. Like we tore out the drywall, we tore out the low hanging ceilings and found like wood above them, like wood slats. And it's such a cool like vibe in here now. So it was a fun project. Cool. Yeah, it was like our own little creative project that we went through, but it took a year.
When I moved into my space that like yours, it was I think my favorite creative project ever. Yeah. People talk about, I designed this logo and I designed this thing and I designed my agency brand and stuff. Some of these things that are so fun in your career history, but designing a studio space, oh my gosh, like I'm more proud of that design project than anything else I've ever done in my whole career. Do you feel that way about your space?
Absolutely. I think it's like the embodiment of like who we are as like a collective of people. And it's also been, I don't know, you can kind of break the rules of things. Like there's like our tenants are on the back wall written up really big, like behind me right now. We have, Practical Rebels is kind of our theme, and we have that painted up huge. We had 2 artists in the community that we super respect do murals. Like our AC vent is a massive like mural the whole way down. Poppy Garcia did that. He's done an amazing job. We had another friend, Danny DeCastro, do like we could have like concept pieces within this, right? So Danny does these incredible like hands. Like she's really well known for hand murals. You may be familiar with her.
Yeah.
But she, I was like, when we move in, I was like, I want a big Danny mural. Like we're gonna have a huge like focus piece that is built by her. So she came and photographed all the team members' hands that were here like during the transition and created this like amazing overlaid multi-color, like it's on our Instagram. It's really cool. So there's like all these little personal touches throughout the space that are like true to our team.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear it? I have the mural up right now. I just turned it on. Of the hands. It's so sick. Yeah. It's so sick.
It's insane. And then like this mural, the vent mural that Poppy did, it's a little bit psychedelic. I mean, there's a lot of just hidden little weird things, organic things that go down the whole, and it spans the entire building. Yeah. So it's really cool. And it's something that's constantly evolving. Like I know there's going to be more pieces that we want to do. We're talking to a couple of people about doing, specifically one, Nate Schweigert's somebody who does these cool little critters. So he's going to do these little critters kind of like climbing over the building on the outside.
The outside.
Yeah, little fun awesome. Touches. So yeah, it's definitely something that's always evolving. But I want it to continue to do so. And I think that the next thing that we're going to figure out is we've intentionally designed it to be very open concept because everybody's continuously talking or passing projects back and forth and like working on things together. And there was a day a couple weeks ago where I was like, oh my God, it's so loud in here. What happens then as we can, oh gosh, I hate saying it because it gives me anxiety. But as if, we keep leaning into what's happening, if we continue to grow, how do we restructure how this space is almost to allow for still more productivity people. But more people. I don't know, we'll see. Everything's working right now. I'm continuously trying to not to break things and better things. But
okay, so you mentioned a number of things that are kind of your favorite little touch points in the space. Describe what it's like. You walk in the front door. How did you make a first impression when you come into the studio? Because if you don't use if you're going to do this, if you're going to build a studio space and you don't use it to create the ultimate home court advantage for your clients, then you're just wasting your money. Yeah. And that was my mindset. When I did mine, I was like, they're going to walk in, they're going to see all the bobbleheads all over the lobby. They're going to have the big agency sign. You're going to be able to see our conference room through the glass with cool industrial light fixtures and all the kind of stuff that I was just trying to create this home court advantage moment. What did you do?
Yeah, it's definitely like, what is our like statement piece? So our entry is still like I have a plan for some things I want to do in the entry that haven't been implemented yet. But we wanted to keep it open, but divide it out into different sections. So when you walk in, like we have kind of an entrance, like seating area that has like cool rugs and cool furniture and stuff like that. We wanted like a divider that was a visual divider, but not actual, like there's, I guess there's the content room up front. There's the open entry space plus working space. Then there's a conference room and like a bathroom. So there are no walls in here, basically. But we started to create like visual dividers. So this was actually me and my dad came in town, and this was our Christmas project. We built out these like cool tall slats, floor to ceiling. I think they're 15 feet. maybe that's too tall. Maybe they're 12 feet, 14 feet, something like that. But they're these tall slats, and it's like a gradient of like yellow to orange to kind of like a pinkish red that like visually divides the space. But yeah, you can see back into the conference room. You can take a look to the right and be like, oh, there's an actual content creation area. Like they can make and film and produce actual content here. It almost is like a peek at all the stuff that is possible within the space. I mean, we've used it for shoots and used different areas of the space. Like we can kind of chameleon different areas to feel like different spaces if we want to, which is also really cool.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I want to do up front is, speaking of like our friends at Lindsay, they recently, I'm like ripping off their idea a little bit, but they're fine with it. But they went and got these really great full size like photos of behind the scenes and production and all that sort of stuff, and it's throughout their office. So we have this really big wall on the right that has a TV on it right now that we can run work and things like that when clients come in. But I want to plaster, like it's this huge black wall, and I want to plaster it with just like behind the scenes and team and like just the energy of the space, and maybe a little work here and there. But when somebody's coming into the door, they already you should assume that they are familiar with the work. Mm-hmm. You know, typically they don't need to be sold on the work. They need to be sold on the relationship and the people and the team. So any sort of opportunities to really highlight how fantastic the team is and like what it's like to work with us, that's really my focus when we have those initial conversations with the client, because we have been lucky to build a reputation for great work and for, you know, a great product. So what we're really looking for when you have those first conversations is kind of like that team fit, that culture fit, that like, you know, it's a two-way thing when you're bringing on a client, right? You want them to like you, but you also want to like them. So, and make sure that it's going to be a good work fit as well. So,
We're not, on this podcast, I wasn't going to go too much into the educational side of stuff because I do all that and all my other channels, but I want to highlight something that's so important that you just said, that if the client is already in the door, then you already passed the, is your work good enough test. They're not there if your work isn't good enough. They're not there talking to you. They're there so that they can trust you, get to know you, get the vibe, see if it's going to be fun, good to work together, see if you're organized or if this is going to be a disaster for them to manage. That's why they're there. They're not there because you're going to walk them through your work so they can determine whether you're good enough to execute. And I think, man, that's such an important thing that you stated to highlight to people. And it's the same thing when you're looking for a job. Like the people you interview for the next great employee of Hatchmark Studio, if their work isn't good enough on their portfolio, they're not even getting the interview.
It's really funny you say that too, because I think back to my former interviews when I was like a young designer. And I remember bringing the portfolio and looking through the portfolio and even working at other agencies. Like a lot of the conversation in interviews was like, talk me through your work. Like when we have an interview, we don't really do that. There may be some conversations about, you know, what their strengths are, like what kind of work they want to lean into are. But if they're here, they're basically, sorry, I have no way to turn this off. They're basically, they've been vetted for the work, right? We know that they can produce good work, and it's more of a fit with the type of work that we're doing, the type of timelines, the type of expectations that we're looking for out of a team member. So we do that as kind of the first interview, and the second interview has nothing to do with any of those things. It's with the entire team and kind of a hangout session and a cultural vibe check, because again, like, that is one of the main reasons I think we're so successful, is because of our team, and everybody likes each other and gets along and supports each other. So
that was the same for me. That getting that cultural fit. In fact, it's the number one thing I hire for when I was hiring my agency. It was like, if you're not going to fit this culture, then you're not going to get a job here. You got to be able to be that fit. Something you said there that I wanted to comment on. Oh, I'll talk to people about their work, but not their design strategy around it. I talk to them just to get an inkling of what their process is. So if we're looking at their work, it's like, what did you do? What did you do first? Talk me through how you executed on this so that I can see their level of expertise in that process flow. That I'll talk about, but not whether the work is good or not, you know?
Yeah. And I think on that too, like in relation to the work, I like to look for how people can talk about it. I think there's not enough, and you do this really well. You say this over and over, like we're in the sales industry. Like everybody, you know, the work needs to be good, but you need to be able to sell it. So when we're bringing in people, no matter what side of the business they're on, we would like to be able to have them or teach them to present to the client, to be on calls with the client, to hear firsthand feedback, and to have that level of like polish and professionals, and to be able to have those conversations and speak to design decisions. So if something is like, why did we do this? Like, well, there's a reason behind it, you know, and being able to have those conversations and take that feedback if it's not, you know, necessarily a home run every single time. So
oh man, when you're in an interview with somebody and their work is good, and then you talk to them about it and they explain their process and how organized it was. And then they are, without you asking, they're selling you on their strategy and their ideas behind it. And so you know that there's substance and not just aesthetic beauty in the work. I'm sitting there thinking, oh, there's an art director. I want that. I need that person. I'm going to have him be in here as an art director, and I'm going to stick him in meetings with clients and have them do exactly this with the client. I love those moments when you're with a good designer who gets it like that. There's such a bright future for those people. It's why you're successful. And I noticed this, you know, clear back in the day when we first met. It was like the ability to be professional and methodical, but still be approachable, or to be confident but not arrogant. I think you do that so well. You always, and I know behind the scenes, there's always the emotional trauma and stuff, and the humility that I know what goes on behind the scenes, but in the exterior performance that you have, you just exude that confidence and professionalism, but you keep that humility in place so you don't ever come across as arrogant. And I think that that's a struggle for some creatives too, where they're just so set in their belief system that it just comes across as non-negotiable and arrogant to clients.
Yeah, thank you, first of all, for saying that. I think that confidence is something that's taken a long time to develop. I mean, I talk to students often, and one of the things I'm very clear about is when I first started freelancing, and this was even before I left to do Hatchmark. I had a brief stint previously where I thought I could run an agency, and realized with a couple other people very quickly I had no idea what the hell I was doing. But I mean, I would get on a call, and just a first call with somebody, and feel like I was like gonna puke. I was so nauseous and like nervous about having those conversations. And I think that being in specifically my former kind of quote unquote real job, right? My former agency job before this was at an agency called Studio Good out of Dallas, or now Matchfire. And I worked under Brian Powell, and he gave me a lot of opportunities to be in the room with clients and to sell my work and to see a little bit more about how the business actually ran. And I think you have to be in those situations and have people above you that allow you to be in those conversations and learn from that. So I think that's one of the big things that I learned from him, is being able to put our designers and creatives, and even people that are, you know, Savannah's on our team. She's graduating from college tomorrow. She's been our intern for a year and a half, and she's coming on full time. But she can pitch a client at this point. Like, she can have a conversation with the client, and, you know, I hope she stays with us for a really long time. But I'm really proud of the fact that if she decides to move on somewhere else at some point, she has such an advantage because she has that skill set that many don't learn for years or at all. And ultimately, when it comes to kind of not being like arrogant or whatever, like, we are in the business of supporting somebody else's business. So we can think our idea is great all day long, but ultimately it is the client's baby. They are the final say in things, and we can defend an idea and say, you know, because, you know, through our expertise and what we've learned and what we've seen work previously, we feel this is the right way to go. But ultimately it's the client's business, you know, and you can't go, you know, it was for some reason, the whole idea of like, sometimes you got to kill your babies is said around here a lot because something won't land perfectly. And that's okay, you know?
Yeah.
And that's just the industry we're in. It can be pretty brutal.
Okay,
but
sometimes you got to kill your babies. What do you mean? What do you mean by this? Like,
it keeps being said here recently, but like sometimes, you know, you're so attached to a design or a logo, even like, so, you know, when you're doing logo variations within a brand project, you know, so you'll love this one so much and it just won't be the one that makes it to the finish line because we'll go through a few different versions and often there will be two different designers working on the same project, coming up with creative and presenting. And, you know, as much as everybody supports each other, it still kind of sucks when yours doesn't get picked and it's okay. And it's just gotta not right for this. So
I refer to that as I like that sometimes you got to kill your babies thing. It's
pretty terrible, but for some reason, that became a thing here. I didn't say it, somebody else did, but so it's funny. What we say.
I call it the polishing turds moment when you've given the client your best work, your best work, and they keep coming back to you with no, but I want it this way, and I want this color, and I want it this way. And there's a moment when you say, okay, I get it. My job is no longer to give you the best design I can. My job is to polish up the turd that you want and make it the prettiest turd that there ever was. That's my perspective on that. And a lot of designers struggle with that moment. They can't let that go. And so they get to that combative state with a client. And I think it's so risky because your job is to satisfy your real job is to satisfy the client's target customer. That's your real job. But sometimes your client doesn't care enough about their customer to let you do that job. Then your job is to satisfy the client. So they'll pay you your freaking money and they'll go move on with their life. Sometimes you get to that point. And I don't recommend it at the start, but like you get a couple rounds in, and if it's clear that the client is just going to want it the way that they want it, then get the freaking work done, charge them the money, get them to pay, and move on to a new project. So,
And sometimes it's an evolution, I will say, because a lot of the work that comes in for us is we're very well known for brand work, and a lot of, you know, the agency grew because a lot of brand projects turned in, okay, what can we do next? What can we do next? And starting to hire the right people that had capabilities beyond design. So now we, you know, have somebody that's great on the marketing side. We have a social media team, all that sort of stuff. But a lot of those clients, like, even if we're not necessarily like, okay, maybe we would have done things a little bit differently, but those relationships keep going and they really start to kind of go along with the process more over time. So those projects aren't always like, all right, we're gone, peace out. You know, it's like, all right, so let's kind of keep evolving and tweaking over time. And those relationships grow and they can become some of the best clients that you have. So,
So what do you say there? If you don't have to kill your baby, you just have to harm the child? Is that but keep it
maybe
alive?
It's not the child you wanted, but it's the child you have.
Oh, I see. So
I don't know.
What? Okay, I'm not going to go into the redheaded stepchild jokes and things. That is a phrase. It's a phrase. We're getting too off color here. There's truth in all of that. Okay, let's go back to the building stuff. What was your process? How did you buy it? Because this is something I've never heard anybody talk about. And I had my experience. I bought 2 studios. One was already finished and then we just moved into it. And then the other one was my dream studio that we built out. Let's talk about what that process is. Did you had to put money down? You had to go get loans, or did you just pay for it outright? Or what was the whole process, and how much more did it cost than what you thought, and all those kinds of things? So why don't you, let's converse about this, because I have my own process that I went through on that. And I think it might be interesting for some people, because I don't know anybody, I've never heard anybody talk about the ins and outs of that.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about the numbers and everything too, if you want me to go into that.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I like open book. This is the creatives listening to this, and if somebody wants to make their dream studio like V has done, this is how you go about it.
Yeah. So I had gone through this process once previously. So myself and my ex-husband opened up a business together, bought a building, and renovated it basically from scratch. So I did have some experience with this and understand, like, I'm very much in that mentality of, like, this is money that's going to be spent anyway. If we were going to lease this building, it would be for the same price that we're having to pay in mortgage right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I definitely I've never seen, I don't quite understand the whole like lease and then renovate, because you're just improving somebody else's property. So I had always had that mindset of that's not the long-term option for us. Like we can have these kind of in-between spaces until we get there, until we find the right space. But yeah, so I had my eyes out for a building for quite a while and had an idea of the size we wanted. So it's a 2,400 square foot building, I think 2,300 square foot building. And it is on the corner of like the edge of downtown. So it's basically, you drive 3 minutes up the road and you're at the heart of Pensacola. Pensacola is also kind of in a very heavy, high growth stage right now. So if you want to buy real estate, you buy it now, because it's going to be like, the value of this place has probably already gone up quite a bit in the past year and a half since I bought it. So it was definitely partially like a financial decision. I just think it's a smart move to own real estate. And so but I also wanted something that was, I've always been like, I'm willing to put in the work. I am not afraid of I didn't want something that was like polished and perfect, because that wasn't like my vision for the space that I wanted. And I also didn't want to pay the premium on somebody else's like vision for a building, right? Yeah. So it was like, all right, what is the grittiest, grossest, like kind of shell of a concrete building that needs like a ton of love, where we can kind of tear things out and rip them apart and then rebuild it from scratch into exactly what we want. So we were able to get this building for $225, which was, I feel like, a really, really great deal. There was a lot of work though that needed to be done. And I think that this was a building that probably wasn't the right project for everybody, because we had to basically, we knew that we would have I think the original quote was like, oh, I'd like to keep the renovations in like 200 or so. Yeah. That jumped up. We went about 100K over budget. Yeah. But that's because we not only had to do the plumbing, the wiring, what's the other big thing? The AC, completely new AC unit, and a completely new roof. So, what are roofs on a house? Like 30K?
Yeah, something like that. Well, I don't know. Post this boom of house prices, it's probably more. But what was your roof?
$90,000
oh
roof.
My gosh!
By the end of it. And it's still having, like, every time it rains, we have this one little area that has a leak. And the roofing company's been great. They're constantly out here being like, where is this coming from? Yeah. But it's like constant. And I think that's part of the thing with like an old building. Yeah. Like, you're going to have weird, funky things about it, and it'll get figured out over time. Yeah. But so it was like a much bigger process once we got into it, from like that sort of thing. Yeah. But in the back of my head, like, I had done this before. I was like, okay, this is definitely going to go over budget. So we ended up spending like what, $550 or so, 600 by the end of it, 600 probably. Yeah. But yeah, definitely got a loan. The fun thing that people need to realize about commercial loans is it's not your 3 to 5% of a house. You have to put down 20%. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a fun check to write. But yeah, I found a great banker, in town that other people had experience with. And, one of the things that they look for is you have to have, several years back of profitability. You have to have great projections moving forward. Owning a house helps. They like to have basically something that they can take as an asset if everything falls apart. If I stop paying on this loan for some reason, the bank will just take my building and sell it for much more than I put into it. So those are the things that they definitely look for. But yeah, it's definitely something that is going to be paid off over the next 15 years. So you want to have a space that you're kind of invested in. Think about where you want to be long-term, and think about the area of town you want to be long-term. Do you have enough space to grow into long-term? Yeah. So like I said, this may be something where the configuration changes if we continue to grow. My plan for growth right now is to have really great resources that we can pull in outside of our core team, because people are expensive, Yeah. You take a salary, and between health insurance and taxes and everything, you're adding $30,000 30%, 25% to their salary for that. So there's a lot of like factors that go into that. But yeah, so I mean, we went through the process with the bank. We had a really great banker. So I recommend finding somebody that will, it's a local bank, not one, I'm sure the big ones can do some great things too, but we have a really great local banker. He calls me up if there's a question about anything, and he showed up at our open house and he works with, works really closely with, throughout the whole process of it. So it made it much simpler, but you definitely have to have that. I think it's probably harder to do if you're just starting a business and looking to purchase a building and renovate and have that big price tag attached to it. It's probably a little bit harder of a process.
Yeah. My first one. My first building that I purchased, I just got a home equity line of credit on my house and bought the building. So it was so fast. The transaction happened so fast. And that one, it was like 220 or 240 or something like that. It was like 2,000 square feet. It was one of those cookie cutter brick little, there's like 5 buildings on the corner and they're all the same whitewashed freaking brick and they all look like dentist office spaces. And, it's chiropractor, dentist office, and then our agency that thought we were cool at that time, but it was this interim space. We survived the recession in that space, and I just used the home equity line of credit and just paid on that, which was cheaper than going and getting a commercial loan, and I didn't have to put the money down. The money down on it essentially was my value of my house.
How'd that conversation with your wife go?
Oh, she's good.
Yeah.
She's just like, I don't know. I've made enough right financial decisions over the years that she never questions that stuff, which is, I suppose awesome. That's great. The second one though, I had a mortgage broker that my realtor referred us to, and she went out and shopped around loan deals and whatever. And we ended up having 2 loans on that space. One was just like a normal commercial loan, something. And then one was like a business loan of some kind. And it made the overall interest rate cheaper. And we used one of them for the build out and the other one for purchase of the shell space. The building I bought into there was a new building. And the spaces weren't finished at all. So we didn't have to rip anything out. We just had to put everything in for the space. Anyway, I was into that, $500,000 or something. This is 2012 or 2011 that we went in there, and it $500,000. And then I sold it. After I sold my agency, I paid off all those loans because I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to having no debt in my life. So I sold my agency, had money, and just threw all the money in and paid off the loans on the space. And then I leased it out for a few years. And then when my renter moved out, I was like, okay, I'm open to selling it. I'm open to leasing it again. And we got an offer like a week later with somebody who wanted to buy it. And it was, they wanted to buy it for $960 or $970 or something. And I was into it $500,000 or so, probably $600,000 at the end. And I was like, okay, one of my rules in life, if somebody wants to pay you $1 million for something that you own, then you should seriously consider it. That's a life rule, whatever it is. It could be your building, it could be your car, it could be whatever. If somebody wants to pay you that kind of money for something, then that doesn't happen every day. So I sold.
Worth considering.
I sold it. Yeah. I sold it.
How did you feel about that?
It was hard. The hardest day that I had in my agency studio space was the day after I moved my team into the agency I sold to. So I sold my agency in 2015, and we moved my whole team into their space, and then my space was empty. And I had to go back the next day after the move and turn off the internet. I had to call from our agency phone to like shut down the internet and fix the phones to transfer to their space or to their studio or whatever. And the wall, and it was dark, and there were no people around, and there were no computers on the desk, and the whole life of that space was gone. It was all gone. I shed a tear in there. I was like, and I still get a little sad thinking about it now, because this thing that I built that had its life and it had its brand and the whole vibe and energy, it was all just poof, gone. It was the people that were inside of it that brought that life into the space. And without the people, it's just some walls at the end of the day. And so that was a tough thing. You fall in love with it, like I know you have. We can tell by how you talked about your space. You fall in love with it, and the murals and the heart and soul and all the thoughts that you put into this, and the trauma of finding out you got to put on a $90,000 roof that you weren't expecting. All of that kind of stuff is what your heart is into that space. And someday when you sell it, you're going to have this weird mixed feelings, because you'll sell it for $1 million and you'll be like, well, that was a great financial investment. Yeah. But you also are losing a piece of your soul when you sell it. And that's hard mentally to get
I can't even think about that right now. It's so funny because people are like, well, what are you going to do in 10 years? What's your exit plan? I'm like, I can't imagine my life without this right now. Yeah. So that's not even, I get asked that like weirdly often, but like, I can't even like process what that would potentially be like. Yeah. I don't know. I think like work is definitely, and you're the same way, like work is such a big part of my identity, and I enjoy it. Like I love what I do, and I love the people I work with, and our clients, and I can't imagine being like, all right, well, not going to do this anymore. Like, I don't know. I can't. Ugh.
I'm the same way. I can't turn it off. I love what I'm doing now so much. Yeah. Okay, so how long have you been doing your agency though? 2015 is when you founded it?
2015 is when I made the shift. Yeah,
so you're it was 9 years. Okay.
Which is wild. But I say like the growth really happened 4 or 5 years ago, because several things. Also, hiring that people that allowed me to do that. But yeah, I mean, technically 9 years. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I know we'll keep in touch either way, but let's touch base on that point at like year 13, 14, 15.
Oh gosh.
And see, and we'll see how you're feeling at that. Yeah. It's really interesting, your timing, because I bought my dream studio space was 9 years in on mine also.
Yeah, I'm telling you, like
timing wise,
it's really funny because I was listening to the last episode of 2 Pixels Off yesterday, and like everything you say, I'm like, this is my brain. Yeah, like I feel like it's like same brain. Yeah. Even I think it was the pricing one and scaling pricing and stuff like that. But yeah, I was like, this is exactly like, I don't know. Yeah. It's there's some oddly weird similarities throughout our paths.
You'll see them in a lot of places too, and I know a lot of agency owners and stuff, but now that you're doing podcasts and getting to know the ins and outs of people's businesses a little more. Yeah. The entrepreneurial journey is so similar from one person to the next. It's the moments when you scale and you're afraid, or the moments when you have to downsize people that you love, and the moments when the client screwed you on the big payment. All these moments are like our tickets to admission in this club of being an entrepreneur. And you're going to have them all. And that's why I wanted to have this chat with you here, because you're getting a big one that very few people actually do, especially now. And that is the dream space moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely feel lucky for it. Yeah. A lot of, I'm beyond like the creative community. I'm really involved in the entrepreneurial community. I've weirdly turned into a person that like loves the process of building businesses, and I'm pretty involved in some like entrepreneurial kind of mentorship programs in town, where I act as like a marketing mentor basically. And you hear a lot of the same things. It really is all the same struggles, just different scenarios within them. Yeah. Yeah. My biggest fear, honestly, like what you just touched on, and I've been involved in agencies that have had to do this, and I think that's why I've always been so cautious with growth, as I never want to hire up to a certain degree and then something falls apart with one client and then have to like lay people off, because I've been in agencies where that's happened, and it sucks.
It sucks.
So but
I never got out of whack that way that I had to downsize my staff because of my financial decisions or because a client impacted me financially too deeply that I had to do it. But I did have to downsize when the entire economy pulled back in 2008 and 9. And that was not my fault. But at the time, I felt like a failure. I felt like it was like, what have I done? Now I had to lay off. I had to lay off like 5 people in a day or something. It was another moment that I cried driving home after that. I only had a team of 11 and we downsized to 6 and it was awful. It was awful. I felt like the biggest failure of all time. Well, lo and behold, everybody in the whole freaking world was downsizing businesses and hanging on for dear life because the stock market was cut by 2/3 of its value. And it was a traumatic time for any entrepreneur that went through that experience. So it wasn't really my alone moment. It was this me getting another ticket into the entrepreneur club where you had to have that experience at some point for no fault of my own. Anyway. Yeah. So, but I hope you get out of having to do that one.
I hope so. I think we had a little bit of that with COVID and we were lucky to kind of avoid that. But part of that, and this could be a whole separate conversation, but we kind of changed our business model during that too. And also it was 3 people. So it wasn't 11, like something major like that happening now when you have 8 people to take care of and make sure that, be responsible for their, financial, like getting paid. I can imagine that's much higher pressure with 11, 3, you're able to be nimble.
It's interesting too, because if you think about the studio space, a lot of the things that make people shy away from it is that it is expensive to do it. You're going to spend $90,000 on a roof and then you're going to finance that over a 30-year loan or a 15-year loan or something. And so there's a lot of cost to it. But when you look at an agency that has 8 full-time team members, the cost of your space is it's like 10% of your overhead or 15% of your total overhead. The rest of your overhead is all on salary. It's so expensive to staff the salaries. So the cool studio space, I am a little surprised that more people don't do it, because when you look at it as a percentage of your total overhead every month, it's not that expensive after you're finally in there and you're done writing all the initial checks and all that stuff.
Yeah. And I think that I'm curious to see what happens in the next 5 years with the whole, because I know companies now are basically trying to like incentivize people to want to come back into the office and things like that. And I think it depends on the industry you're in, but I mean, you see all types of business models, and I'm sure you see some creative industries working great remotely. And we have some clients that are in the creative industry that work fantastic remotely. It's just, I'm curious to see where that kind of lands. I don't think what we have here and what I really want to nurture and build is possible when you're not in the same space. It's just different, Like I love, it's really funny because you have this balance between like billable hours and, time that you need to be charging and all that sort of stuff. But like one of my favorite things is like I'm heads down in a project and coming to the back and they've rolled up the door and they're like playing cornhole outside. I'm like, take a mental break. Like that's the sort of stuff that I think, is important, and having a space to do that, and having we had this morning, every 2 weeks it's called breakfast and breakdown now, because we realized there was a problem with people feeling they didn't know what was going on, what projects were coming in, where things were at, what new business was coming in. So every 2 weeks we do kind of a little update on everything that's going on, and we have breakfast together and have fun, and Ramsey does like rap to start it off. Like there's these weird little things that start to grow, and things that start to grow organically, and those little ownable things that are only true to us that you can't force and you can't have if you're not all together. So it makes it fun.
It is. It's good. I'm a believer in the model of the on-site team, because so much of the creativity that we have comes out of us through collaboration with other people. And I was nervous during the COVID years. I probably have content floating around where I talked about it, just saying, what impact is this remote workforce world going to have on the global creative output? And not just in design creative kinds of people, but in the ideation and the innovation that any business requires when we're not sitting next to the other people and having that communal brain experience. Are we inventing less stuff? Is the innovation happening like it did before? It'll be interesting to see. And we probably won't know for 10 or 20 years when they do some study and they find that, oh, did you know that there was X number decline in innovation during the post-COVID years for 5 years afterwards because of not having this on-site collaboration team. There are very few people that can just whip it out and make it awesome all by themselves. So many of us need that team collaboration to make it happen.
Yeah, and we're like naturally social animals, right? Like I think working from like, so everybody went remote for a bit during COVID. I went insane. I was like, I can't just continue to get out of bed, go have breakfast, and then go walk to my office, one room over. And like, I think it's not, it suppresses creativity. It suppresses that feeding off of each other, really. And, you can get on a Zoom call or a Teams call, but it's not the same.
Yeah. It's not the same because you don't play cornhole and you don't have the rap, you don't have a rap battle.
You can't run to the back if like, hey, let's figure out this problem. Let's run to the conference room and put it up on the screen and talk through it and whiteboard it out or whatever. So
you just don't have it. So it's interesting because we're going to continue to see it because a lot of people aren't choosing the path that you chose and that I chose to build this studio space. They're choosing the path for remote. And there's a great thing about it. Great to have a remote team. Great. I
would argue, remote teams are great. And we do definitely work with a few people that like are developers out of, Washington State. But I think that one thing I will say is I think that there has to be a mind shift from a space being an expense to a space being an investment.
Yeah.
There is, I don't know how much of it is attributed to us being in a space, but this year, we moved in December 20th of last year. We were like, there was one day we got the approvals. We didn't even know we were moving that in that day, but we got approval from the city, our certificate of occupancy, and we literally were like, guys, let's go. And we, a couple people that had trucks brought them over. We moved our stuff over that day and we're like, we're ready. The increase in business and our profile in the area and visibility in the area has been significant. I firmly believe that having a space, especially when you're able to make it something that's like cool and, the kind of cool creative space or one of the really cool creative spaces in the area, has a impact, like you said, when a client walks in the door, on impression, on when people see it on social media, on when they see all your stuff to come together on your website, from the video to the space to the, the whole package that you offer. I firmly believe that it pays for itself multiple times over.
Easily.
So yeah.
Mine did too. Our billings increased. We hit Inc. 5000. We were in number 1600 something on Inc. 5000. And I attribute that to the post-recession emergence, but we bought our coolest studio space and the build out and everything right at that moment. It was the end of 2011 and the very beginning of 2012 when we moved in. And that was the post-COVID era, or not post-COVID, post-recession era, when all of a sudden people started spending again and the stock market started their bull run again that we're still in now. It all started then. And I believe it on the space, home court advantage. We had clients, so we were doing work did some outsource work for an agency that's based in Manhattan. And they wanted to come out and see us we were working on this huge project with them. And they wanted to come out and see us. And we were like, oh, well, we can't right now. This was when we were still in our old crappy space, it was still nice, but it wasn't my vision. So we kind of kicked them down the road like a month and a half. And we were like, oh, you know what? We're kind of in our move right now. So just come down and we'll schedule that for when we get into our new space. And they were like walking the floors in our space, looking out the windows and seeing the Rocky Mountains, and we still had snow on the tops of the mountains, but it was green everywhere else. And they were looking around thinking, how do you guys get any work done? This space is so cool. It's so great, blah, blah, blah. And we had our exposed beams and our chalkboard wall and our whiteboard room and all the stuff. They were like, oh, this is great. And then we had meetings in their office in New York, and it was just like another office. It wasn't the cool space like what you've done here. So you get it. Anyway, we worked with that agency. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars with us over a few years' time. We had the ultimate home court advantage. They didn't push back when we sent them $100,000 a year retainer proposal, and there was no pushback. All of a sudden, your ability to charge more goes up.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's, you know, you have to have the work and the quality and the people to back it up, but it's also like a level of perception.
Yeah.
Like people that in businesses that are successful want to be aligned with businesses that are successful, and the experience that they have when they walk into your environment, into kind of your home, makes a big impact, you know. And I think it definitely does help during that sales cycle, especially if they're considering a few different options, you know, bring them into the space and have a meeting here. Like we have clients that want to have, you know, doing brand workshops and stuff like that. We used to have to use like the co-work space room, and we have clients that have perfectly great offices, but they want to come here. Because it's a fun, creative space, and you know, you don't have to the conference table. You can go sit on the couch that's like right across the room and still participate, and you know, and then play cornhole after, and then you know,
and then
maybe have a
what happens after that experience with the client there? They never use someone else because. Oh, V, she's so great. We had so much fun playing cornhole. And, oh, the team is so great. And I love going to their studio. That whole experience, that customer experience gets so entrenched that you're going to win in the future. Your relationship is better, and your customer experience, the perception of your agency is so much better. So you win. And then the bonus, which you don't even have yet, but you will in someday, is that the space itself is gaining in value more than what you're spending on the loans for the space itself. So all of the money going in is just coming back into your net worth at some point in the future.
Yeah. It's not going away. It's just being held.
It's being held
temporarily.
Yes.
Yeah.
Being held by the bank. That's who's
it's paying for the bank. Yeah.
And then,
they're just hanging on to it. Get it back one day.
That's what
we
they're
sell
doing.
this, but
I don't want to
do that.
They're loaning it out to people for more. They're loaning your money out to people again, to other people, and then more money to other people, and it's all just a big Ponzi scheme. But that's a conversation
I gotta get in the
for another
bank
day.
business.
Yeah.
Every now and then we'll be working with a client, and we're like, we're in the wrong business, you guys.
Yeah.
We need to go do that.
I know, right?
So, how to become a bank now, but
Yep. Well, good. V, this was super, super fun. Thank you for being an open book about your space and how you got into it and some of that story. It was fun to chat with you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on. Where can people find you?
Find us at hatchmarkstudio, just one studio.com. And you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook through that. Also, we recently started a podcast, probably a few months back, as kind of like personal, selfish, wanting to have conversations with different people. But you can find us on Practical Rebels on all the podcast channels. But we have a lot of conversations about not just agency and creativity, but also kind of entrepreneurial development, leans into kind of the marketing world. We like to keep a thread with that. But we have great conversations with some of our clients and people we look up to. And maybe Mike Janda one day wants to be on our podcast.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, it's recorded. I got it.
Oh, yeah, no, I love doing that.
I got it live.
Love doing that. Of course. You have some interesting ones. I was listening to some of the most recent one that I have up right here, The Birth of Business Through Personal Struggle, the Fertility Resort with Bryant Liggett. And I was like, okay, this isn't a conversation that you're having on any other podcast anywhere. There's some interesting clients and interesting people that you're bringing on.
Yeah. Well, BB specifically, she's been in the marketing world forever, and she basically went through a lot of infertility issues and realized there was a gap in the market there and built a business from it.
Yeah.
And is incredibly successful. So those are really some of the stories that I like getting into. We had Felipe Munoz, and previously he's in the kind of mental health space and talked about stress and burnout in the workplace and things like that, especially, and he comes from the creative background as well. So we have a lot of really great conversations that all tie back, but when there are things that we feel like are worth talking about in conversations we have with people, we're like, all right, how can we make this happen?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit, it's a selfishly fun project, but yeah, we really enjoy it a lot. And Ramsey on our team has a podcasting background. So it's
he does?
All right, let's do this.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's good. Yeah, it's really good. I'm just going to shout out, I love that you're doing this. And I'm going to shout out the fact that people need to start doing longer form content that relates to your business. The reason is because all the short form little stuff is going to be just noise on social media because of AI and low cost Canva templates and things, that it's so easy for people to just crank out the little short formy stuff. When you get into things like this podcast and Practical Rebels, these podcasts, it's that longer form content that I think really brings the humanity back into business. And I think the people who aren't doing that are going to lose that human touch of their business, because so much of it is just going to be AI generated. I have some people, I'm on their newsletter list, and I get a newsletter article every day, and I'm like, I'm going to stay on it. I know it's not written by a human. I know that it's not 365 newsletters written by a human every day. It's freaking Chat GPT, and I'm just not going to spend my time in that. I'm going to spend my time with human to human connection. That's what I'm leaning into.
That's what this is all is. And like, everything in business is connections, and it's building relationships with people, and it's learning more about people beyond the surface level sort of thing. And that is how you grow relationships, connections, business, all that sort of stuff. And that's the type of stuff that I'm interested in creating. Of course, we do the social content. We have to be doing that. And we want to put, one of the big focuses we have with social is like the people behind it, the processes, highlighting clients, highlighting why we do what we do, in the work as well. But, that's the type of stuff that I'm interested in is, having conversations with people and, maybe sharing some things that other people can learn from in the process through that chat.
You're doing awesome on your Instagram with that too. You're always showing, here's our new employee, here's a shot of the team, here's the shot of the inside, here's a little snippet of your brand reel, here's the next episode on the podcast. It's that insider humanity of your agency that I think you're doing a great job getting out there through your social channels. So it's a good one for people.
Thanks.
People go look at it. Hatchmark Studio on Instagram, because it is a great model for what every agency should be posting relating to their business.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. V, thank you for being on. It was super fun. We'll do more of these in the future. I like we said yesterday in our text, can talk to you for 20 hours about other stuff too, but I'm glad we talked about what we talked about today.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. Like I said, you're my guide for, decisions whenever I've got something I'm questioning. So definitely appreciate this and appreciate all the content you put out. And happy to continue the conversation on anything we want in the future.
Okay, let's do it. Thank you.
All right.
See ya.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.